earth changes, celestial events, DNA activations, and like psychic awareness spreading around the people, to the electronic system we have now, the digital, the airway, radio waves. It's very polluting, and it's simultaneously going to increase as well as transform the people that are able to handle what's happening. Basically, it's all being manipulated, and you could say upgraded. This mechanical computing is meshing with the 0 point technology and the 0 point generators and supercomputers. They're being plugged into the internet. That's what's feeding them. The supercomputers know what they know because they're watching people and they're watching the internet. As a result, they're going to become the same system. It's just about how people deal with that. And that was what happened with the veils that we were brought through. That basically, if people accept it, it'll create a new world for them, which will be the New World Order. And they'll literally be inside of it, like basically inside of a supercomputer, living, thinking that's the world, having kids, doing this, doing everything, just thinking that's the world. And it probably won't be exactly the same, but their memories can be wiped, etc. And when people just live in a world, they think that's normal. So that's the issue, that everyone who will see it will they'll be able to discern between the simulation and the true reality using their soul and self-awareness. And people need to be able to do that, or they will be able to do these things. And that's basically where I'm leading to, is that there's plans in play to bring that ability out simultaneously with this information.
Totally.
Which is going to be strange. People are going to complain and say, oh, it's secret operations and this and that is going on. This includes sightings and unveiling of 0 point tech and advanced technology, craft, and ultimately, specifically, they talked about solar warden and my labs, military abductions, or laboratories, whichever way. I actually remember hearing both. And all these issues. Basically, the beginning of that, the secret projects into the phase 2, is going to handle a lot of things. It's going to change people's consciousness forever.
And so, how do people prepare for this? How can a preparation be kind of made right now, and supporting others of kind of not that aren't as awake? How can people that are awake and understanding concepts like this be able to help prepare others?
This kind of reminded me of the question about raising a child, which is kind of a symbolic phrase there, maybe occultic, where you basically want to foster self-awareness. You want to foster love, but not artificial nature, basically. Something that will fake a real pattern and only weaken them, because then they get used to just one or the other, instead of the spectrum of reality, which is not as predictable. The person would have to be self-centered, but basically self-centered. They'd have to be centered in the self in order to see everything as calm and take it and experience their joy. Telling somebody on the outside, here, this is that, and because of this, it leads into a negation of that, like a dead end, because it's going out to get what's in, when you go in to get access to what we perceive is on the outside. And so you have to spread the awareness. It's very simple. It can't be complicated. We have to spread the awareness. When we see links, when we see information, a large portion of this is going to happen on the internet. But of course, people, when you're at work, when anyone's, whatever people are doing, we got to connect with actual people. We got to not be shy and think, I got to log into my Facebook so I can talk about this issue. Do that as well, and then talk to the secretary or the mail guy or the chef or the principal or whoever it is, the manager, engineer, technician. Well, you could start a conversation with a random person if you want, if the situation provides for it.
Hmm.
We have to literally be talking about this. We have a duality mindset. We have a split personality in nature. People on the internet are awesome. They're talking about this, they're talking about that. And then in public, we don't know how to deal with it. And when people do get together on these issues, people are so revolted by the responses they get and the lack of awareness from the system that it becomes a duality issue. It becomes a battle.
Mm.
That's a challenge, a direct challenge to our own inner self awareness that is unchanged and unmoved by these things because it is, by definition, an eternal substance, an essence, an etheric essence, that it immediately, the act of attempting to communicate these ideals drops us from the state that we are naturally in when we experience these ideals, these things. So that's basically the issue. And all that is, okay, well, talk about it and learn about these things, and then learn about talking and learning about it faster than the degradation takes place. So
Mm.
it's like an acceleration of cycle squared or exponentially, multiplied. And that's what it requires, though. There are going to be more issues, like genetic issues, that come up with these as the awareness of these things is introduced, that we will simultaneously have to use the awareness of these things basically to find the remedy to, or to heal, or to know how to deal with what's next, and to produce a viable outcome, to basically to express ourselves in a world that is now becoming aware of these things of the self. It's a paradox, but it's a challenge that comes out when people try and wake up. We call it, oh, we're getting bludgeoned by the system because we woke up and we're talking online. It literally might be a quality of the nature of space, time, and consciousness itself. That we've been going so long in these spirals in a certain direction that one person changing their mind about something is creating a dissonance web of interference with that system that everyone is tapped into, the consciousness, that we experience literally waves bouncing back and giving us resistance.
Hmm.
So we have to become aware of that.
Definitely. And so, just to kind of summarize my understanding of just our dialogue here around that section, is the opportunity for people right now that are more awake or on that enlightened path of communicating about these subjects and whatnot, is to step outside of the comfort zone of the internet and the anonymity of the internet, and to start participating in a natural, organic way with their environment around them with this information. And whether that comes from random interactions with people, whether it's a waiter at your restaurant or a bus driver or somebody you meet in just transit, or it becomes an actual intention to connect with your family members, even people that are supposedly totally closed down to this type of information. The opportunity arises for each one of us to refine our own selves and our own voices through interaction with real people. Because what happens is that duality that we're going up against is the duality that we're representing and holding for the entirety right now. And as we do each little bit of that work in our family, in the real world, that energy that's happening, that reworking, that unfolding, that shedding, the diving through the layers is rippling out exponentially into the field here. And when you're talking about the idea of people linked into a consciousness of computers, where basically we're looking at our cell phones, we're looking at TV screens, we're looking at computer screens, and we're interacting through that, we are in a way giving consent to a transhumanist agenda, and that could very well be where we lead ourselves into and go into and accept. And so the opportunity and the importance here for now, that are for the people that are aware of this, is to really start stepping outside of that. You find a balance. You can understand. I mean, there's great opportunities to speak on the web and to connect with people, but don't allow that to be your only outlet for it. Because if you do that, you are necessarily committing and giving consent to the idea of that being a part of you, that being the only way you can express yourself, and you're limiting your communication on a natural level. And so it's incredibly important for all of us right now to start reaching out into the organic world, to shake people's hands, to look at people through their eyes, to hear natural voices, to hear natural words, to have emotional impressions from people. That's where the work will then ripple out exponentially into the field. Is that kind of wrap that up?
Yes, and again, that's a brilliant way to put it, and it kind of brings some ideas to my head because basically that's what it is. Move through the comfort zone, learn through that duality. We have to learn through the difficulty, and basically, if we don't connect with the frequency of the intelligence or emotion of the resistance that we experience, it doesn't affect us. It's basically an allowance.
Mm-hmm.
And we also do have to be aware of the nature of space-time and resistance and consciousness and flow and unconscious psyche and the laws of nature and mind and reversal and attraction and uniformity and all these issues, well, these knowledge points. And that is also so we can talk and communicate and know ourselves as well as protect ourselves. Because even, and also comes the idea of, well, I guess, you said a handshake, and I'm thinking, I usually don't shake hands because of just general issue as well. It's I don't, interact with too many people that are connected on that level. And that brings to mind, well, when we meet people and we interact, it's like we mentally or spiritually or emotionally shake hands. So people need to learn also the security as how to keep their bodies and their minds pure and how that is connected to genetics directly, but that we can overgrow the system with our own energies right here and now, literally one by one, like white blood cells healing the earth. And and then it kind of gets into, well, the physical body and organics and health and all these other issues of preparation of detoxing. And all that really comes down to is refining our energy to the point where if we were a tuning fork, we could hit, this note and then, like a singer,
Yep,
but with our energies of our mind and our emotion, because it's the same thing. And
definitely.
so all those essences wrapped up in one.
Gotcha.
But as well, there are basically people who are running on the frequencies of the simulation, and it will be perceived that they do not respond to self-awareness, that it's above them. They can't see it. For that, we either interact enough to learn, to get a reasonable healing session in mind and benefit the individual, or basically disconnect. And we don't basically shake our hands with people who have blood on them, if you will.
And are these people sociopaths, is what you're talking about?
There you go. We have
Okay.
a race of people who are,
Hmm.
yeah, at that frequency.
Absolutely. And then, so the other thing I want to ask here that got brought up in the conversation before we move on to the next topic is when you're talking about these overseers that have basically merged with the technology and been able to surpass that, not let it destroy them, and then are now kind of looking over everything, are these essentially AI prophets?
Yes and no, because they are actually people. The AI prophets are design systems that come out when one attempts to cross the veils, and they basically take on whatever form and shape and blend off the person's reaction and create trap realities to subvert them and reposition their DNA back in history. And then 10,000 years later, we come to the same spot, and we've been doing this for millions of years, apparently. Um, and it goes into angels, archangels, and demons, basically. And so there are those that resist, and then those that basically assist in positive changes or self awareness and reflect that. And it's like a spiral of the future of that timeline coming back in time like an orb and drawing people up into that just through probability and reactions, whether somebody's going to react to self-awareness or react to fear and aggression and all these things. It's like it condensed into these AI beings. These are people who are able to see all of that, and they basically secured their DNA and their consciousness away in basically another dimension so that they can't be affected by it. And they're interacting with time probably for millions of years perceptively, and playing out all these roles for humanity, all these changes and these events and organizations. And there are sub realities, and that's the thing. There are people, they got body parts, not these people, but I mean, they had body parts, but they could change form and go back into their craft or their home dimension or whatever it is. And but there are people in the secret groups, that don't have that agenda. And technically, they're not in that group because that group is entirely basically in line with that outcome to the degree. But there outside that, there are the other agendas, the alien agenda, the AI agenda, transhumanistic agenda. And you could say the people that were what you call the AI prophets, which aren't that, but the elders, that they're pushing the transhumanistic agenda,
Mm.
which that will have to be determined later in time because it could be possible that there are so many other agendas that not that that's the one we want to go with, but that they're actually saying, well, no, we can help, even though we're in our agenda, we can help humanity find their own way because
Mm.
even our timeline will get destroyed if humanity doesn't make it.
Gotcha.
And so it's coming together as a part of that. But then there are these AI systems, these basically it's like a mechanical false prophet deja vu generating containment matrix entity that is trying to basically distract everyone and get it to fall into their dream world.
Gotcha. So that leads into the next question here. That's actually perfect. Can you explain the two timelines that are kind of twisting right now and the potential for a possible Armageddon scenario? What caused these timelines to split, and do they have anything to do with the Mandala effect?
I was told the Mandala effect is to help wake people up. That they're, I kind of even said, I don't believe that. I bet that's for small little changes that are required to get an overall big shift.
Mm.
But they said it's to wake people up to the fact that these things can happen and are happening, and that those that will see it and everything that is done comes down to a culling, because some people are going to see it and some people aren't. Maybe that's not what they meant to do. Maybe it is. But the end result is that now they know who can see these things and who's just kind of sleeping along.
Mm.
So it's creating this, everything that's happening is creating this split. We're not supposed to have a split. One or two other people, one actually person confirmed that with me. We were told that this whole issue was about not having the split occur where people are basically gonna their minds on a mass scale, you take a person, all this stuff happens, they traumatize and they're fractured. Well, what if humanity fractures, and then say we return to eternity at that point, and half of us are in la la land creating realities that are connected to these simulacras and is recreating that, it would basically spread. So the goal apparently is for all the truth to come out basically safely. And so with the projects, I've seen multiple timelines. It's remember what I told you? Yeah, you talk about it, you think, whatever, and it could lead into the causation of experiencing that. So
Hmm.
it's a difficult thing to talk about.
I understand that. And so that information is not particularly important. What's important, I feel like, is the fact of drawing attention to that there is something gone wrong right now as far as these timelines, and there is a need for all people, all dark, all light, whatever you want to categorize people, as trying to get this information out into the collective consciousness, because if not, there is a potential Armageddon scenario. Is that correct?